Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our very last Plastics Dialogue for today. Welcome to BASF at K 2025. Welcome aboard our plastics journey. We're going to be talking about nothing less than transforming the building and construction sector. Sounds like an easy task. No, it actually isn't. I have some experts here with me who will explain all about it. I'm very happy to welcome Adela Lankel. She is the head of sustainability at Bachel. I'm also very happy to welcome you, Ralf Pasker. And you're working for the, I have to do this, European Association for External Thermal Insulation Composite Systems, EAE. Thank you. I was not looking there. You have to explain the next abbreviation that I give you definitely. And Gregor Haverkemper from BASF. Hi, everybody. Good to have you here. So, Ralf, I already said the next acronym goes to you, EPBD. What is that and why is it important in order to transform the building and construction sector?
EPBD means Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which is...
also applause for that, please.
which was one piece of the puzzle of the so-called Fit for 55 package. You know that the European Commission throughout or during the last term of the European Parliament and the European Commission released a package of pieces of regulation that was revised more or less in parallel to align with the new EU climate law, which said to reduce climate house gas emissions by 2030 by 55%. So this is why it was called the Fit for 55 package. The idea behind was to align all existing legislation at European level in a way that it contributes to this objective to reduce CO2 emissions or better greenhouse gas emissions by 55%. A big piece of that puzzle is the EPBD, Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, because the European building stock consumes 40% of all energy used in Europe. It contributes largely to the CO2 emissions that we have in Europe. So the construction sector as such offers the biggest leverage, if we look at the different sectors, to reduce CO2 emissions. And this is why this Energy Performance of Buildings Directive has been revised. It is in force since last year. It was one of the latest pieces of legislation which was cited and agreed before the European elections. It will become into force, or let's say practically relevant in some pieces. So some other articles become relevant next year. Then we will have from 2028 the obligation for all larger new buildings that greenhouse global warming potential at the building level needs to be assessed.
What does larger mean in that context? Larger.
If I remember correctly, it's more than 1,000 square meters of use area.
Okay.
And
just to give an idea.
Yeah. And from 2030, this will become relevant for all new buildings. And this is then basically, but this is more for the insiders, the reason why in the construction products regulation, the declaration of global warming potential at the product level needs to be introduced as the first indicator so that architects can calculate with this figure the global warming potential of the whole building over the life cycle.
You mentioned architects now basically as the first step in conceptualizing any sort of building. What other players are involved in order to fulfill that criteria and to essentially transform building and construction?
Well, in the end, it's the whole construction value chain. It starts, of course, with the manufacturers, because if the objective is to decarbonize our economy and to decarbonize the building sector, of course, it starts with embedded carbon. This is done then at the product level. It also covers let's say, the contribution of the products to energy efficiency of a building. Then, because this is one piece of the puzzle which is very often forgotten, we have currently a huge discussion at the European level about affordable housing. The European Commission promised to publish a draft plan for affordable housing by the end of this year. current discussion very much focused on embedded carbon, so the upfront costs. But what is much more important is, let's say, the cost that buildings generate during their life cycle, the operating costs. Because this is what tenants hurt if they need to pay huge operating costs. So this is something that must not be forgotten. But this is something that, of course, as you can imagine, we follow up closely in Brussels to make sure that, let's say, the assessment considers the whole life cycle of a building. Because in the end, the building design determines very much the costs, the sustainability of the building stock for decades. If it's not done sufficiently and sustainable at the very beginning, well, then we have lock-in effects, and the building stock continues producing CO2 emissions far beyond 2050.
At the very beginning, this is where you come into play, Gregor.
Yes, correctly. Very beginning is a good starting point as well, because everything began with our insulation portfolio already in 1953, because Neopor was already at the first K Fair. And after that, we developed raw materials which are very precisely developed for this EPBD implementation, especially when we talk about Neopor. Neopor is a raw material which achieves 20% better thermal properties, which means you can thinner the insulation values. This is not a new product, it's already 25 years old, but it transformed the whole industry, and we haven't stopped since then developing new products. For example, just to give some examples, and I think this will really bring us some advantages in the future. We have since a couple of years Neopor Plus in our portfolio. Neopor Plus means you can even thinner the insulation boards, which makes sense when we speak about renovation. Think about the roof, think about the window framing and so on. It's good to have very thin insulation boards, and therefore we are happy to have, for example, Neopor Plus. And we also think additionally about portfolio which you can use for perimetric application and roof application. This is, for example, Neopor 5 Pro. So therefore we have a portfolio which perfectly fits into this transformation in the construction sector.
And these are products which enable a more sustainable way of building, but is there also sustainability embedded in the actual product?
Yes, absolutely, and maybe you can start from that perspective, from a converter perspective.
Yes, of course. You mentioned these two aspects of this new legal act. The first aspect is we know that we have to reduce our carbon footprint. How can we do that? We can reduce the footprint of our products, we can reduce the footprint of our buildings, but we also have to increase the energy efficiency of our buildings. That means we have to build with insulation that covers our houses and that enables us to reduce our energy consumptions. On the other hand, we also have to look into the products that are in the building. That means we want to have a sustainable future with sustainable houses. That means we can't just look into the energy efficiency of the buildings, but also into the carbon footprint of the products that enable us to insulate. So, for example, you talked about the Neopor. This is a project that has been it's going on with Karabach and BASF for a couple of years. It is a great product which shows that we can not only produce something that is valuable for the future, but we can also do it in a way that is sustainable. That means we use recycling material within our products. We use them safely, and we enable to produce something that has value in sustainable, but also in energy effective way.
How much pull do you also get from, let's say, your customers or from architects, for example, for these products?
Unfortunately, we have to say that the market isn't it is on the way, but it's not as far as we would like to have it. We have as BASF, we also have a product portfolio that enables our customers to look into this topic, not just into insulation, but into sustainable products. Unfortunately, maybe we would need really another legal incentive that helps our customers to see the potential that these products also have.
So the transformation will take a couple of years, until the market will accept all the portfolio topics we have.
Right.
But basically, we ask ourselves 3 questions. How can we replace fossil-based raw materials at the beginning of the value chain of our products? How can we reduce the product carbon footprint of our products? And the third one was Adela just mentioned. How can we introduce also some recycled content in the products? But this is not coming from the construction as such, and maybe that's something Ralf can talk about, that the construction industry, when it comes to recycling content, is also a specific topic.
It is. And not only this, but to complement what you both said before, it's indeed the reflection which I also get from our members, from the ethics manufacturers. There is an interest in the topic of sustainability, but it does not automatically generate demand, especially if the demand leads to higher costs. Because this, building insulation is highly cost sensitive. So this is something this needs to be developed, and I think this is also a lot about communication to generate awareness for the topic. And this is basically the idea why in the construction products regulation, which was another piece of legislation out of a Fit for 55 package, it was decided that in the future, environmental sustainability performances of a product need to be declared. So that automatically, when it comes to building design, designers, architects start to think about it. And they need to include it then in the assessment, the sustainability assessment at the building level. So I think this will be a process which in the end will take years. Probably it needs to be complemented with some incentives that building owners really do that. And when it then comes to recycled content, to come back to your last aspect, or do you want to jump in?
Exactly, yeah.
Then we are currently discussing how this will be handled then basically practically in the product standards, because there we need to find a fair balance between a very, let's say, granular approach, which basically the European Commission, DG GROW, wants to have. And on the other hand, what is practically feasible in the construction sector. Because what very often is not understood is that, you can draw up legislation and European standards which are very detailed, very granular, but if in the end this is not is not easy to handle by the construction value chain, then you block the market uptake. It's a simple issue. And second point, if you make it very granular, it creates costs, and those costs are not honored in the end by the end user. So you just generate efforts in the industry, and if they cannot, let's say, carry it over to the margin, well, then it's not a good business case. So this is why we try to find a balance, saying, okay, making the declaration of some aspects mandatory, be careful with that, especially when establishing minimum requirements. Because for our industry, ethics, for example, this is also already a discussion which I had in Brussels. If in general it would be said that, let's say for construction products, from 2035, a recycled content of 10% would be mandatory.
Yeah.
Then I must say this is something that our industry, the ethics manufacturers, most probably cannot fulfill. Why? We are talking about long-lasting products. So once an ethics system is installed on the external wall, it lasts for 50, 60 years. So what we currently observe and experience is simply that the amount of demolition waste, which could be recycled to feed in, let's say, the next cycle of ethics systems, is marginal. It will increase over the years, of course. But this is why I'm very sensitive in setting targets on that, especially if they are established horizontally for all construction products, because there will be some industries that can deliver, especially if their life cycle of the product is much shorter. And there will be others which simply cannot fulfill, although our industry is really committed to all the objectives. And this is something that, we need to discuss with the people from the European Commission, with the political decision makers, that we take an approach which is really feasible, which can be done along the construction value chain.
But maybe to build on that, even though we agree that recycled content as a mandatory thing will be difficult in construction industry, we together with Karl Bache have started some projects to demonstrate that the full recyclability of the product is given, and we incorporated post-consumer waste into our Neopor raw material, and these can show that recycled content technology-wise is possible and the material is fully recyclable.
Of course. So to avoid misunderstandings, I'm not against declaring the recycled content of our products. I'm more careful with setting horizontal targets that fit for some industries and are simply not feasible for others. But the calculation, of course, should be done, and of course, the customer should know the recycled content of a product. Again, there we need to discuss how this is calculated.
Absolutely.
But I think there are measures that you probably know better than I do. This is, as I said, to find a fair balance.
And I mean, recycling content is only one of the ways how to make it. There are many possibilities how to make your products more sustainable. This is one that we wanted to show our customers. This is the way to go. We have proven everything. If it stays only with recycling content, it's on another page. But I think it's important to stay in the discussion to show that these kind of projects are not only possible, but for the future necessary. And let's give the customer maybe also the chance to look into the products and see what suits him or her.
I mean, in the end, as I mentioned in the beginning, transforming the building and construction sector is not an easy task. So probably, if I'm asking you kind of a last question now, what does it take to transform the building and construction sector? I won't get an easy answer, but maybe we can try. Adela, what does it take from your perspective?
I think it takes to stay resilient, but also innovative, because even though we have worked with this kind of material for decades, there's still something to discover and maybe offer in terms of research and development.
Gregor, what does it take?
We need raw materials which enable our customers to fulfill the demand, and therefore we are also happy that we increase our capacity for Neopor in the future. So we really believe in this market, and innovations needs to be there to really enable the market to transform.
I said I probably won't get an easy answer. Yeah, and probably I will now take a bit higher perspective. I fully agree, and I see a strong dedication in the whole sector to deliver. I know that all the manufacturers along the value chain are developing solutions. But on the other hand, what also needs to be understood, and I think you had it in the panel before about the
green transformation, killer or booster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is also essential is for the industry, but also for designers, for architects, that we have somehow reliable framework conditions. Because this is exactly the point which killed building renovation here in Germany, which killed building renovation in Italy. First, we had very attractive financial support schemes. We had a stable regulatory framework with, of course, demanding and ambitious targets. But then political decision makers decided from one moment to another to stop it. And let's say 2 years ago in Germany, I think the funding schemes have changed quarterly. And for weeks, no funding scheme was available. And this really stopped all initiatives. And what political decision makers need to understand is when we are talking about buildings, even if it's just renovation, it requires a couple of months to have a plan, to have the permits if needed, to have a bidding procedure, etc. And then the customer needs to trust in the existing funding schemes and also in the regulatory framework conditions, because otherwise it happens that the whole concept that was elaborated for the building to renovate it is obsolete, because doesn't neither fit the funding scheme nor the building regulation. And this is what I once told 2 years ago, a member of the European Parliament. Targets for the industry can be ambitious and they can be demanding. We have always a consultation process at the European level where we are involved, where NGOs are involved, so all the stakeholders are involved. But once we have agreed on some targets, then we need to stick on it. Yeah. Because otherwise, manufacturers start developing things, they create business models, they invest in capacities. Yeah, but if the demand is then not there because political decision makers have decided to completely unwrap existing agreements, well, then this is simply not feasible.
I'm trying to sum this up now. What does it take to transform the building and construction sector? I would say products, partnerships, persistence, and the right people. We have 3 of the right people here on stage, and you're going to stay with us for a couple of more minutes. So if you have any more questions, you're invited to come up to us to ask Adela and Ralf and Gregor. That was our last Plastics Dialogue for today. Thank you all for joining, and have a good rest of the day. See you tomorrow.
BASF. We create chemistry.